Well, hello there. I'm Allie, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. If you like readings of Reddit posts, creepypastas, scary stories, or SCPs, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. Also, read the description and stick around to the end of the video to know where else to find me and how you, yes you, can support the channel. Now, let's get on to the narration.
We had reason to celebrate. We caught the thumbnail killer. Don't be fooled by the inane, media-concocted name. He was as dangerous and cold-blooded as they came, and our humble little police force in our humble little town had the honor of capturing him just in time to prevent a young lady from becoming his ninth victim. I was still a rookie, barely 3 months on the force, and I wasn't there during the arrest, but I was definitely there when they brought him into the station, and I definitely partook in the celebratory bat-patting as we eagerly discussed the positive PR this would spin for our modest little department. The 2 arresting officers boasted, while the remaining 3 of us listened in awe and admiration. They were cunning, brave, and swift. The would-be victim was tearfully grateful and declared them her heroes. The thumbnail killer was weak, careless, and insane. He was an out-of-towner, seen lurking around for a few days, hunting under the guise of being an investor. He was brought in cursing, rattling his chains, proclaiming we would regret not letting him finish his work. He said people will die. We told him not anymore. Not with him off the streets. He said we didn't know what we were dealing with. We told him serial killers were a dime a dozen, and he wasn't even one of the memorable ones. That's a good way to deflate the ego of pompous monsters like him. But the truth was, he did leave his mark. His MO was unique and baffling, and led to his moniker. All his victims had their fingernails removed, with their thumbnails placed underneath their eyelids, like grotesque contact lenses. The other 8 fingernails were recovered in the stomach, and the lips and eyelids were stitched shut meticulously. I'll spare you the gory details, but autopsy revealed that the victims were alive during the entire process. They were all found with a Y-shaped bruise across their torso, oddly positioned exactly where the pathologist would perform the incision. How they came to acquire this bruising was never determined. The cause of death was always exsanguination, although the method in which it was done was also a mystery. He never hit the same city twice. The abductions occurred anywhere from a few hours to a few days before the time of death. He didn't favor a particular age, gender, race, religion, orientation, sexual history, or social status. His victims were always found restrained, but the methods ranged from the common, such as ropes, chains, and tape, to the unusual, such as barbed wire, cement, and braided catguts. They were always found in secluded public areas, fully dressed and unmolested otherwise. The thumbnail killer was on every department's radar across the country, and the case had baffled officers for 4 years, but our unassuming little squad managed what the others couldn't. Our local bum, Rob, reported hearing a female screaming from an abandoned shack, and, long story short, we arrested the elusive thumbnail killer before he finished removing his 9th victim's nails. He was placed in our holding cell for the evening, to be transferred the next morning to our agents, psychiatrists, and everyone in between will be waiting to pry his real identity from him, interrogate him, and dissect his mind, motives, and methods. Our celebrations were cut short, though, when the power went out at the station. After the usual groans and jokes, flashlights were opened, but the festivities were put on hold as the phones started ringing off the hook. Calls complaining of yowling cats and howling dogs, of birds' unusual cacophony at 8 in the evening, and of animals from goldfish to horses acting unnaturally. Soon after, the weather began changing. Harsh winds, uncommon for our lazy autumn months, were tearing up street signs, knocking down branches, and rendering deck furniture airborne. The phone lines went dead, and officers were dispatched left, right, and center to deal with the emergency our quaint little town was suffering through. Eventually, I found myself alone in the dark station, left to hold down the fort and keep an eye on our deranged prisoner. With the eerie wailing winds and shifty ominous shadows making me feel on edge, I decided to go to the holding cell and entertain myself by rubbing our prowess in the prisoner's face. Our sleepy little town seldom reared criminals. The worst infraction ever committed was shoplifting. Therefore, that night, our holding cell only had one occupant. I could hear him shuffling impatiently, swearing under his breath, his leg irons jingling with each agitated step. The clinking and muttering stopped when my flashlight's beam preceded me, gliding across the linoleum tiles as I walked closer until it rose and settled on his surprised, squinting face. There I was, with only a few metal bars separating me from the thumbnail killer. He was older than I would have expected, perhaps in his mid-40s. He was average height, average build, quite average all in all, bland, unremarkable. You'd probably give him a polite nod at the grocery store and forget him the second he passed. He cleared his throat and I nearly jumped out of my skin, my flashlight's abrupt movements making my jitteriness embarrassingly obvious. "Listen, you have to let me go," he said urgently. "Things will get worse if I don't finish my work." I straightened my posture and squared my shoulders, trying to make up for my humiliation as I confidently said, "Your work is officially over." "My work is never over. You fools don't know what you've done. You have to let me out so I can stop this." "Stop what?" I asked, with an exaggerated air of indifference. "The storm out there," he replied, nodding towards the door. "And it's only going to get worse." "And how will you control the weather?" I sneered. "This isn't the weather. I have until midnight to make things right. Just let me go, or a lot of deaths will be on your hands." I snorted. "You really are a lunatic, and you're all damn fools," he growled, causing me to jump yet again as he grabbed the bars and managed to rattle them, despite his hands being shackled to his waist. "And you're a serial killer with 8 victims," I shot back contemptuously. "Almost 9 if it wasn't for us." "Not victims, sacrifices," he corrected. "And you'll be responsible for a hell of a lot more deaths tonight if you don't let me go." I scoffed. "Uh-huh. Right. Let me see. Letting you go, deaths. Keeping you locked up, no deaths. I think I know what any sane person's option will be." He emitted a heavy sigh of exasperation as he sat down on the bench. "Listen to me, kid. No one will be safe here, not even us. I have to finish my work by midnight tonight. I can't explain because there's no time, but believe me, it's the only way to stop the destruction out there and save everyone. With my morbid curiosity piqued, I checked my watch. We have 3 hours until midnight. That's plenty of time for you to explain. He leaned back heavily against the wall, swearing under his breath before he muttered, "Fine. Just point the damn flashlight away from my face." I shifted the beam towards the floor, and he sighed as he said, "It's a curse. A family curse." I suppressed a chortle. "Seriously?" "Yes, and apparently my great-grandfather offended some mischievous being." "Mischievous?" I snorted, like a rascally little hurricane demon huffing and puffing away. "Don't trivialize, kid," he scolded. "It's a powerful being. It's fickle and playful, but has no sympathy. It does what it wants." "Uh-huh. So, does this mischievous being have a name?" I asked with a smirk. "I don't know, it didn't tell me." "Oh boy, this is rich," I chuckled condescendingly. "And how did your great-grandfather offend it?" "I don't know, it didn't tell me that either." "Uh-huh. So what can it do?" "Whatever amuses it," he replied. "If it's feeling mellow, it may just mess with us by displaying weird lights in the sky, agitating animals, flattening corn in random shapes, making—" I didn't bother suppressing my laugh. "Crop circles? Are you serious?" "Yes," he said resolutely. "And that isn't our main concern right now, because ever since my great-grandfather offended it, it's had a penchant for natural disasters when it gets impatient." "Uh-huh, so what does this have to do with you and your murders?" "I've been peacefully raising a family and working an honest job like any average man. But when my father passed away 5 years ago, that's when everything changed. That's when the being first talked to me." "Oh boy, please don't interrupt," he said irritably. "It told me that since my father died, the curse is passed on to me, the firstborn. I'm now responsible for appeasing it with a sacrifice by midnight, or else it will unleash hell. So if I don't offer it a sacrifice by midnight tonight, expect this entire town to be demolished by tomorrow morning." "You expect me to believe ripping the nails off defenseless people, placing them in their eyes and mouth, stitching their faces shut, and draining their blood will appease this mischievous being of yours?" I asked incredulously, my lip curling in disgust. "I don't drain their blood. It does," he explained, his tone stoic. "Its demands have evolved over the years. It started with animal corpses back in my great-grandfather's time, then human corpses during my grandfather's time, then livestock during my father's time. But from me, it demands live human sacrifices, and the closer I come to following its requests, the less havoc it wreaks." "Requests?" "Yes. Victim types, methods, restraints, locations. Some things it's fixated on, other things depend on its mood." He emitted a wavering sigh, before he dropped his head and muttered to himself, "And some things I'm certain it requests only to test my limits, to punish me for an offense I didn't even commit." "Gee," I said, ignoring his melodramatic act. "Too bad you weren't already a sadistic murderer, or else its demands would have been right up your alley." He glared at me. "This isn't a joke, kid. This damned curse is a nightmare." "Uh-huh. So your dad never mentioned this curse to you?" "Never," he hissed in disgust. "I would have killed myself by now so that the curse could die with me, but I'm a father. I never would have had kids if I'd known. I can't die now. My firstborn. She's only 12. She's too young for this. I don't want her burdened by that being whispering ungodly demands in her head every month. Wait, every month? I asked in surprise. You've heard voices in your head telling you to kill every month for the past 5 years? He sighed. Yes, and only one voice. Its voice. Are you telling me you've killed? I struggled to do a quick calculation in my head. 60 people? 55, he corrected warily. I didn't believe the being the first few months. I only took actions when the coincidences became too much to ignore. He frowned as he looked away regretfully. I've got a lot more blood on my hands than those 55. I was stunned by his confession and focused my flashlight on his face again. Where are the other 47 victims? I asked firmly, not falling for his simulated remorse. There are 2 more you haven't found yet, he replied, squinting. I'll let you know where they are if you let me do what has to be done. What about the other 45? This isn't the only country on Earth, kid. I've had to travel worldwide to keep up with its whims. I don't even live here. I stared at him, dumbfounded, and he stood up and approached me, grabbing the bars. Please, if you can just let me finish what I started, I can save this town and save my daughter, and you can give closure to the families of the 2 sacrifices. I'll even promise to let you know where to find each new sacrifice I perform in this country, starting with tonight's. Before I could let him know how much his ludicrous offer disgusted me, a deafening crash resounded down the hallway and I jumped, colliding into the bars as I whipped my flashlight towards the door, my heart racing as furious winds began whistling through the corridor. It's getting impatient, he whispered in my ear, causing me to fling myself away as I realized just how close I was to him. And you're insane, I growled, shaking off my embarrassment as I went to investigate the crash's origin. My jaw fell open as I saw what awaited me. The windows were all demolished, and the merciless weather had taken our simple little police station hostage, its destruction illuminated in bursts by the crackling lightning. I looked around in a panic at the frenzy of airborne files, whirling office chairs, and drenched technology, my badge useless against the raw power of nature. Amidst the dim and darkness, my heart dropped as I saw a shadow hustling towards the exit. I whipped my flashlight towards it and gasped as the beam revealed the thumbnail killer. I immediately reached for my gun, fumbling as I aimed it at him. "Stop right there or I'll shoot you!" I yelled over the screaming wind. He didn't listen, and I didn't hesitate to fire, getting him in the leg with my 3rd shot. He fell heavily, clutching his thigh. I grabbed the handcuffs off my belt and my blood ran cold as I realized my key was missing. I cursed my indiscretion as I realized he must have stripped it off me when I was close enough for him to whisper in my ear. I kept my gun and my flashlight trained on him as I approached, my footsteps squelching as I tried to keep traction amidst the sodden paraphernalia littered on the ground and dodge the flurry of paper and office supplies whirling around me. My beam of light revealed his tense form on the floor as he leaned against the wall, crimson streaming over his fingers, an anguished expression on his face. He may have been crying, or it could have been the rain glistening on his face. "You fool!" he yelled over the chaos. "You've gone and killed us all!" "Don't move!" I yelled back. "Lay down on the ground and put your hands on your head." "Can't you see what's happening? We don't have much time. You have to help me find a sacrifice. Down on the ground!" I roared, my fear and disgust melding into agitated fury. He bowed his head in resignation, slid himself flat on his stomach, and placed his hands on his head. I stepped up to him tentatively, cuffs prepared, but I underestimated his deviousness as he grabbed my ankle and knocked me to the floor. My flashlight skittered away, its beam twirling through the pandemonium as I fought against the thumbnail killer for control over my gun. He won, pinning me down and pressing the muzzle against my head. "This is not what I want, but you'll have to do," he growled. "You won't get far," I said as boldly as I could despite my trembling. We won't. We know what you look like. We'll find..." I wasn't able to finish my heroic statement before he knocked me out cold. The most painful sensation I'd ever felt in my life roused me from consciousness. If you've ever had an eyelash stuck in your eye, multiply that by 1,000,000. The agony crackled throughout my nervous system, and I frantically tried to open my eyes, only to meet resistance. I screamed through my sealed lips and began to choke on something in my mouth. Small, flat, sharp objects were sticking to my throat. I coughed frantically, but they refused to budge, so I struggled to swallow them, feeling their coarseness scraping down my esophagus. My hopeless predicament and the intolerable pain eclipsed my other senses as they seared through my composure. With my wrists shackled to my waist, I began to buck and squirm, shaking my head like a maniac, barely acknowledging the storm raging around me, the stinging of my fingertips, my hobbled ankles, and the certainty that the thumbnail killer was nearby preparing to exsanguinate me. My face felt like it was on fire, instigated by the infernos that have taken over my eye sockets and were now scorching their way into my brain. I was writhing fitfully on the wet linoleum, soaked and shivering, my heart spasming, my vocal cords haggard as I shrieked myself hoarse, my neurons fired haphazardly, having lost all semblance of sanity. My screams got lodged in my throat as I felt a crushing weight upon my chest. 2 lines that started at my shoulders and a third at my navel, the 3 merging at my sternum, the Y pressed down harder, pinning me on my back, and I gasped as all my senses erupted at once. I was soaring, but plummeting, my heart tumbling in my ribcage. I shivered as I sweated, ecstasy and agony tantalizing my nerves. I was floating as I sunk down to unfathomable depths, twirling but stagnant. My eardrums recoiled and strained as sirens and whispers simultaneously sounded. A medley of odors wrestled my control of my olfactory system, bedazzling it with a repellent and delightful alike. My taste buds shrank and tingled against the foul and mouth-watering. Colors I'd never seen before flashed before my eyes, breathing both horrifying and breathtaking images. Waves of these inexplicable sensations whirled my mind into oblivion, and I found myself fading as each wave drained me further and further until there was nothing but emptiness, absolute emptiness. I woke up 2 months later in a hospital. I was found unconscious and nearly exsanguinated inside the semi-demolished police station, the thumbnail killer's second unsuccessful sacrifice. He had shackled me with the very cuffs and leg irons he had freed himself from earlier. My thumbnails were placed under my eyelids. The other 8 nails were found in my stomach, and he had sloppily sealed my eyes and mouth shut with superglue. The method of my failed exsanguination was a mystery, as was the cause of the faded Y-shaped bruise across my torso. My eyes, needless to say, were damaged beyond repair. As for our ruffled little town, it survived. the storm having stopped some time before midnight. Other than numerous cases of injuries and property damage, no deaths were reported, and life went on as usual after a period of recovery and restoration. The thumbnail killer was still at large. I told everyone what he confessed to me regarding his productiveness, his prevalence, and his delusions, but I had no answers regarding his identity, nor the remaining 47 victims he claimed to have sacrificed. No crimes carrying his MO have been reported since I was found, which could mean he had gotten better at hiding his work, he was killing in another country, or his injury had slowed him down. I also told everyone what I experienced during my ordeal, and I was assured that my harrowing situation is what lent itself to my vivid, multisensory hallucinations. I agreed. Blood loss, excruciating pain, confinement, the boisterous storm, and finding out you just become a serial killer's next victim was enough to make anyone lose their mind. I felt nauseated every time I imagined the thumbnail killer watching me suffer as he held me down and slowly drained me of blood in his cryptic way. I didn't know if he took pleasure in what he did, or if he truly felt compelled to do it, but it was distressing nonetheless. I also didn't know why he didn't finish the job, but I guess that both the inclement weather and his injury played a part. My parents took me back in, while I recuperated and adjusted to living life as a blind former officer. My career in law enforcement snuffed before it began. I did connect with a young lady who we saved from becoming the 9th victim, our shared experience paving the way towards an empathetic friendship. The thumbnail killer had talked to her too, spewing the same story he told me, but the difference between us was that she believed him. Nonetheless, I appreciated her company and support. I was grateful to be alive and to be surrounded by love and encouragement, but I knew I would forever suffer paranoia, anxiety, and nightmares. He ruined my life. I was resentful, but also humbled. It was my arrogance that caused this mess. I shouldn't have engaged with a mentally unstable prisoner. I shouldn't have put myself in an unsafe situation that led to a serial killer going free. 4 months later, I was discharged from the hospital. I was in my old bedroom at my parents' house, practicing reading Braille on a quiet weekend afternoon. I could hear the phone ring, and after my mother answered, she handed it to me, saying it was one of my friends. "Hello?" "Hey, kid," the disturbingly familiar voice said. My blood ran cold and I nearly dropped the phone. "How?" I collected myself and mustered up an authoritative tone. "Where are you?" "I can't tell you that," he replied. "And I can't talk long, but I wanted to thank you for—" "Thank me?" I interrupted, my temper and humiliation merging. "You should be doing more than that. You ruined my life." "You left me no choice," he said matter-of-factly. "You shot me. I wouldn't have been able to find someone else in time, not with the storm raging outside. You weren't as per its requests, but I was desperate. The town would have been destroyed, we all would have died, and the curse would have transferred to my daughter. I couldn't let that happen. What we did saved many lives." "I don't need your deranged justifications," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You murdered 55 people, ruined the lives of 2, and who knows how many more you've killed these past 6 months. These are actual people, not ambiguous ones you keep claiming your murders have saved." "I'm not asking you to condone my actions, kid," he said. "I did what I had to do. Sacrificed a few to save the many. I just wanted to let you know that after 5 wretched years of listening to its soul-crushing demands, you lifted the curse." He chuckled in disbelief. I tried to weaken it by sacrificing the disease-ridden, the drug-addled, the malnourished. When that didn't work, I began offering it the healthiest, the smartest, the most beautiful, hoping it would forgive my bloodline. I tried time and time again to find loopholes in its demands with varying success, but somehow it was something about you that broke the curse, because it hadn't spoken to me since. I held my breath for a few months, almost afraid to believe it. I'm free, kid. I'm finally free. My daughter is free, and all our future generations will be free. That's great, I growled. I think you should go to your nearest police station and tell them all about it. I'm not turning myself in, he replied. I've done a lot I'm not proud of, and I have to live with the decisions I've made. But it's ruined 5 years of my life, and I'm not letting what it forced me to do ruin the rest. I'm living in peace with my family, and I'm trying to make up for my actions. I growl. If you think you're going to, I have to hang up now, he interrupted calmly. I'm glad you survived, kid. I really am. I didn't enjoy what I had to do. I just wanted to thank you and provide you with some closure and reassurance. You stopped the thumbnail killer, kid. It's finally over.
Hey guys, Ali here. Thanks for sticking around this far into the video. If you like my videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. Also, check out the description so you can follow my social media and find out how you can support the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next upload. Bye!